Lower Denevron was hit hard by the surge too.
Perhaps even harder. It looks as though it's been ripped apart.
Broker's Arch, the market moon gate.
Where? Oh, there's a small panel here. Struck a vein, as my dad used to say.
Wait, I was half listening. Are you hurt?
Metaphor. Her dad was a miner.
We've got a tally sheet of some sort. Series of numbers below. And a bunch of garbled text below that. I have no idea what I'm looking at.
I might. Before the surge, the Denevron market was famous across the Maida. Caravans left the Enclave with enchanted treasures. Gate was the end of the Strand Road. Led through Forbridge and beyond the Vale.
That's the edge of how far I can push the scry. It'd be like in the Vale's shadow all over again. End of the lifeline, Bryn.
Dead body and a hidden cache of materials. It sounds like the start of a Skuld's tale.
All we need is a saber conveniently placed on the mantle and we're set.
More seriously, you said you had an idea about that sheet?
Remember that I used to work the trade lanes?
I do.
The dockers always wanted big loads for the cranes. But certain things, like, say, herbs, you'd only ship in small quantities. Over the years, the convoys developed a system where you'd have runners and haulers. Runners would make quick trips and bring small goods to a drop. Haulers would pack the cargo together and make longer hauls to the docks.
You think we're looking at a similar system, then?
Absolutely, I do. It's the sheet you found. That's a requisition for a runner if I've ever seen one. And note how it says Scout Group 23 here. That's a lot of groups.
Which means my mysterious observer is part of a large organization.
And an active one.
Do the items they're asking for seem important?
No, I don't think so. Lane thinks the garble at the bottom might be, but not the order itself. They're prioritizing fabricated items over raw goods.
What would that indicate?
At a guess, our Hearthsiders have lost, or were expecting to lose, production capacity and wanted backup parts.
How can you be sure the Enclave folks would use similar methods to yours?
It's centuries old, and you don't fix what wasn't broken, especially in a crisis. And from the state of the capital, they were definitely in crisis.
Kaz, I have to ask. How does it feel having this specific piece of information at hand right when we need it?
Why?
Because if we suddenly needed to know about Calnhaven or export quotas, I would feel pretty special.
How is that a thing you know exactly?
Dad was a miner. A really good one.
Promise you won't tell the others?
I can manage that.
Then yes. Yes, it feels amazing.
When you say requisition,
Think of it like an order. Bread, cheese, carrots. But left at the drop for the runner to prioritize before the next gather. It takes forethought. There's necessary lag between the order going out and being filled. But any logistician worth their salt can see a few months ahead and plan accordingly.
what do we do with this information then?
At the bottom of the sheet, there's that series of numbers and letters. Those would represent drop points. I did some digging with Lane, and they're referring to coordinates on a map of the Enclave that was made just before the surge. L7 is part of the capital, see? That's where you found this drop. So, I'm inferring that these other marked coordinates are just as likely to have drops.
I'll check them then.
If nothing else, we could find materials for our own stocks. But I'm hoping there's more.
Maybe where our Hearthsiders are hiding.
Also, Lane was looking over the orders and wanted to talk to you about the writing along the bottom.
More drops, and talk to Lane. Got it. You wanted to talk about the supply orders?
Indeed. It's about the gibberish along the bottom. Notice how the writing is in a different hand.
Yes, I can see that.
We're looking at a cipher. Someone sharing encoded notes.
Any initial guesses as to what the cipher says?
Hard to say exactly, but what we know is these orders were for Scout Group 23. So let's assume there is an organized group of Hearthsiders arranging these drops. At a guess, this was an unofficial channel of information passed to those in the field.
Information that would be invaluable to us.
Agreed. Why encode text if it's not significant?
You're sure we're dealing with a code and not just doodles?
While possible, it's not likely that someone would scrawl nonsense on the bottom of official orders. Why do so? To practice calligraphy? To refine their writing? Perhaps. But this is decidedly not calligraphy. Ergo, cipher.
What's your background with ciphers, Lane?
There's something of a hobby for me. Specifically, breaking them.
A fan of knowing secrets.
More a fan of information being shared freely. But also, yes, Udean nobility relies on them heavily, and being privy to the dirty laundry of the nobles is advantageous.
Can you give me a quick rundown on encoding, so I'm sure I'm following?
A favorite topic of mine? Cipher is a blanket term for securing text so that only an intended recipient can read it. They range from reasonably simple swaps of letters to complex changes that require devices or key sheets to solve. But, as notes quickly added to supply orders, the codes we are dealing with were simple by necessity.
Sounds like we have a cipher to break. I'll keep hitting dead drops.
Any code is easier to break with more samples. You can work on it like any other research project.
An abandoned city like Denevrin. It must be full of supplies we could use. Do you think you could maybe grab some things for me?
You know I'm happy to help. What do we need?
I've noticed there are more arcs in the city.
So have I.
The upside is, according to Lane's logs, the ones carrying shields could be scavenged for assault. A metal we could use to reinforce all kinds of gear and facilities. A little heat would help in prying it off the arcs.
All right. I'll come back as soon as I have some.
Great. Thanks, Bryn. So, spare a little rassault for a good cause?
Right here.
Perfect. I was actually thinking it would be good to start stockpiling some Acalahide. The nights get pretty cold here, and we could use it to reinforce our tents and blankets for warmth.
I'll be back in no time.
Thanks, Bryn. Please, hurry.